Everybody, it's good to be back. Glad that Stacy could take care of everything last week. That was good. I appreciate the grace. And if I start flopping around, just deal with it because it's just the way things go. So what I want to talk about today is about strangers. Okay, and even yesterday, I heard it at our house. I heard stranger danger, right? We know about that. That's one of the things that we teach is about stranger danger because we don't want our kids going someplace with a stranger. Even if the stranger says, my mom or dad or grandma or grandpa sent me to get you, right? That's one of the things that we try to teach. The Bible doesn't really talk so much about stranger danger. The Bible talks a lot about how we treat strangers. Okay? So I'm not talking about the dangerous stuff at all. The other thing that we're doing during this time of Advent, this time of preparation, is we're talking about homelessness. Right? And what that means and what that can look like. Well, the Bible doesn't really talk about homelessness either. The way that the Bible infers stuff about homelessness is really about the stranger, okay? About the wanderer, about the one who doesn't have a place to lay their head, right? Jesus said that the Son of Man doesn't have a place to lay his head. He claimed being a homeless man, right? So I want to talk about stranger and homelessness. But I want to talk about the stranger that is in me or in you. But I can't talk about you because I don't know what it is for you. So I'm going to talk about some of that for me as we get going. First thing I wanted to do, though, was talk about how easy it is to be without a home. And around the time of Thanksgiving, there was this article that showed up in Madison.com about a guy named Joshua. And he's 19 years old right now. He actually is working at Operation Fresh Start, which is right down the street. And he's learning some stuff for an occupation in conserving our parks. Okay, so that's the end of the story. Okay, and Joshua has a place to stay now, and it's healthy and all that stuff. That's the end of the story. Story begins in 2012, when Joshua was at home having arguments at home with his mom's boyfriend, and he kicked him out immediately. After a couple arguments, this boyfriend of mom kicked Josh out of the house. Josh was able to get some of his backpacking gear and a sleeping bag and hitched a ride to Madison, and for 18 months, lived under the bridges and in the Arboretum. Okay? And there are lots of places, right, that are under bridges that if you go under John Nolan Bridge, you'll see that there are places where people stay. There's other bridges around town where people stay under. The Arboretum is a great place for people to pitch tents. A lot of people who come and ask for things around here from me, and I ask where they're staying, it's just they can't tell because these are secret places and you don't want to tell anybody, right? And it's where you keep some of your stuff also. So Josh had been living there for quite some time. One terrible night when it was really cold, all of his stuff got stolen. His backpack, sleeping bag, whatever else he had with him, stolen because somebody else had figured out where his stuff was and it was gone. The night was dipping below zero, and so Josh found a 24-hour gas station, and that's where he stayed. That's a smart kid, right? And a really nice manager, right, who was at the gas station, who was willing just to let this kid walk around until the morning time. In that period of time, there was a person who came to get gas and realized that Josh was in some need, and so he immediately went out, bought a new tent and a decent sleeping bag, and brought those to him. And so you sort of see how angels sort of show up in the midst, right? How these figures, this incarnation of God, shows up at the right time and in the right place and in many, many different ways. But the question is, at that point, who was God? Right? Was Josh God? Whom somebody found a way to serve in a really gentle and careful way? Or was the person who brought the tent and the sleeping bag acting like God, who could share a very special gift for this person? I suspect the answer is yes. That it can go either way, depending on how you look at it. Okay? It can be really fast in how you become homeless. It can be one argument, one line crossed. It can be a job loss. It can be one payment for your apartment that you can't make. It can be it can be a court date that you miss. And all of a sudden you find yourself homeless. It's interesting to me how when folks are homeless, we describe them as homeless, like not with their name, right? We forget the name, and so suddenly we have this stranger because they don't have a name. I realize that there's something really weird that I do, and this is part of my confession of the morning. There's a fella named Mike who was coming by here like weekly for a long time. Nice guy, very super intelligent. We talked about things every Sunday morning. He would come by during the week. But when I was talking about him with other people, I would refer to him as Mike, the homeless guy. How awful was that? How demeaning, right? And how fast can I erase that out of my language? Why can't I talk just about Mike, who came by and wanted to talk about some stuff? Why do I have to put this caveat on there? Is it for me? Probably. And that pretty well stinks. The Bible talks about how we treat strangers, and in that, I think the Bible teaches us a little bit about how we should treat one another and homeless folks and just everybody in general. In Deuteronomy chapter 10, God speaks saying that we need to do justice for everybody, especially those who can't do it for themselves, especially for those who don't have an address that they can put on their job application, right? Of being able to have food for everybody, of providing some clothing. How harsh is it to go to a job interview when your pants have holes in them and your shirt hasn't been washed in quite some time, right? Tough to get a job. Start to talk about Mike, the homeless guy, not Mike. And the fact that he has a college degree and does this and that and the other thing, right? What about offering love and compassion? Deuteronomy talks about that. That's sort of like the thing that the person who went and got the tent and the sleeping bag for Josh. Jesus says in one of his stories that we should clothe and nourish and love and visit the stranger. And when we do that, we know that we're also visiting him. So, was the guy who gave the tent and the sleeping bag visiting Jesus, or was Jesus visiting the guy with the sleeping bag and the tent? Right? And the answer is still yes. It's got to be. It has to be that way. In Luke, Jesus is referred to by a stranger when two people are walking down the street on their way to Emmaus, and he's tapping him on the shoulder, and Cleopas says, "Are you the only stranger in Jerusalem who hasn't heard what went on?" And they're talking about this crucifixion, resurrection thing. And it's Jesus himself, and they call him a stranger. And he could be like, "Duh! I'm the one. Been there. Can't you tell it's me?" Later they go on and they have a meal together, and Jesus insists that he breaks bread. And right now, he's still a stranger. And he breaks this bread and he passes it out, and they're like, "Holy cats, that's not a stranger. That's Jesus. He's the one. He's the stranger. He's the homeless one." The earliest Christians were reminded to show hospitality to strangers and to treat others as they want to be treated. Right? That's the golden rule. Treat others as you want to be treated yourself. Pretty basic. Yeah? Not so bad. Here's this other thing that happens, and it's some verbiage that I think we need to get rid of somehow. We try really, really hard here to get rid of it, but I'm going to share it with you because it's really easy to fall into. The easy thing is to call the stranger or the homeless them, right? To make a box and put them on it, and to just put that there and to say, anybody who smells a little bit off, put them in the them box. Who look a little bit different, go into the them box. Who appear to be a little bit rough around the edges, put it into the them box, right? And in using them, what we create is this bubble of a relationship that we cannot penetrate. We can't get through it. So there's no way that we can get to know these other people who are beautifully and wonderfully made, says God. Sometimes I think that we choose not to inquire about people and about their names because we don't really want to hear their story. Because everybody has a story, right? We all have stories. We all have that thing in us that drives us in some way, shape, or form to be whom we are. And so maybe we don't want to hear that. Maybe we don't want to hear it because it could hit way too close to home. Either in ourselves or with somebody else. Maybe if we learn some names, we can learn some stories as well. As you read Scripture, them really isn't a word that's used. It's all about us. Very different word. Us is very inclusive. Right? It tries to incorporate everybody into one thing, one arena of relationship. So we're in this churchy time of the year called Advent, which is kind of a wacky word if you haven't grown up in the church. It's these 4 weeks leading up to Christmas. It's a preparation time. It would be a lot better if it were 9 months, right? Because what are we preparing for? We're preparing for a birth, right? We're preparing for Jesus to be born. We know that he was actually born a long time ago, so maybe 4 weeks is enough. But we need to know about this preparation, right? And what we do during this preparatory time. And at least, and I don't know how this went for everybody who had kids. Oftentimes when we had kids and when we learned what sex our kid was going to be, we would name them. We'd name them right away. And I think we did it. So, because we never talked about this. But I think that we did that, or even before, even if we didn't know if we were going to have a boy or a girl, we said this is what the girl's name will be or this is what the boy's name will be. I think we did it so that whenever we had that child, when Mel would birth that child, that it wasn't a stranger. Right? That we knew this person. That we had interacted in some way, shape, or form with this child who was going to be born. So the cool thing is, right, that we're waiting on this pregnancy that's coming from Mary, and we know that Jesus is going to be born, but Jesus has a different name in these 4 weeks leading up to Advent. And his name is Emmanuel. And who remembers that one? We sang about it. What does it mean? God with us, God with us, right? God with me, God with you, God with us. It's this amazing universal sort of thing. It's not just set for a couple of people. So the big trick in all of this, the big working cog, is to try to put the us in the them. And I believe that it's God's deepest desire with an all-encompassing us to offer love and grace and hope and forgiveness as we participate in this time of getting ready for Jesus. So where do we see Jesus? That's a good question. We say that we hear or see him in the teachings in the Bible, right? We say that we experience him in some way, shape, or form in communion. We say that when we are the church, right? When we say that we're the church, some way, when we say that we're the church, we are him, right? We're the body of Christ. And that sounds pretty good. But how else do we see Emmanuel? How do we see God with us? How do we see God with us in somebody that we don't know, in the stranger, in the person who doesn't have a home, in the person who's trying to hide their stuff in the arboretum so nobody else can get it? My confession, continuing, right? So here's how I do it. Because I realized in putting this thing together that I have like layers that have to be totally cut through in order to make an all-encompassing us. And maybe some of these will resonate with you. But as I was thinking of our neighbors on Winnebago Street who live in their cars and campers, neighbors who live in the Arboretum who frankly sleep right back here where it's a great overhang. What layers did I have to get through? I had to get through namelessness. Had to cut it away. Assumptions about why or who they are, and presumptions about what has happened and why they are in these situations. I have to cut through wanting to create a distance. I have to cut through cynicism and prejudice. But as I did this, what I realized is that really what I need to do is get to the stranger that is in me. Because that's the one that has to come out first, right? Because, and you may not be there right now, and that's okay. But in some way, shape, or form, we still have the stranger that's within us. It's this guard, it's this guardian kind of thing that keeps us safe. But that thing I'm going to call a stranger for right now, if you read what's his name? Anyway, if you read some psychology books, it is called your shadow ego, which is one that is like sort of behind you, but you need to acknowledge it. And so that shadow for me includes namelessness and assumptions about who I am and who I'm supposed to be, and presumptions about who I am and who I'm supposed to be, about wanting a distance between that piece of me and who I show, about the cynicism I have about myself and the prejudice that I have about myself. What I realize is that these things are exceedingly emotional, that we have knee-jerk reactions to all of this stuff, that there is a lack of compassionate understanding. So I lay it out there. That's it. I admit it. And so what I realize is that the only way to get through some of this is by joining together with some people who are at least able to struggle with me, to find forgiveness and grace and hope and love at this table and with you all, and in this greater community that we can call Schenck Atwood neighborhood, in this place that we call Zion, in this thing that we call a community of faith. To get together in a supportive way with all of us, frankly, who are quite strange and beautiful. Right? I mean, Jesus did not pick pretty people. They smelled bad. They worked hard. Their hands were calloused beyond calloused. This is that time of year, right, when it's so dry outside, when your fingers crack. That's the people that he hung out with, that he held hands with, prayed with. It's us. We smell bad at times. We are unique. We are beautiful. We're not always clean cut. We're disheveled. And we're broken. And the sooner that we can get rid of the word them and claim the word us, the sooner that we will be able to be born with Jesus again. Emmanuel with us. One seemingly minor thing that you do, and I don't know what it is, one seemingly minor thing that you do can change the world. You know, they call it the butterfly effect, right? The ripple effect. Whatever. Andy Andrews, right? Yeah. It's beautiful. And it's true now. Now scientists have actually realized that if a butterfly flaps its wings in India, right now, we will feel that effect in some way later on. That actually, because we are in this closed system, that butterfly wing flap will affect us. Boing. Right? Crazy. One minor thing that you do gets rid of thems and creates an us. And that's beautiful. Jesus says something to this effect in John chapter 15. You are no longer strangers without a home. I call you friend. And everything I share with you is from God. There are no more strangers. And let's work at making no more